Students, welcome back. We were talking about distribution of fission fragments, and we were about to draw a graph, and the graph was drawn between the mass number of fission fragments and the percentage yield. And I was just explaining what we mean by percentage yield. That means you take uranium heated by neutron, you get some particles like this, you get some different particles like this, and as we have seen, in case of fission we don't have very small particles. The particles or the parts are comparable to the actual element, because you see we had uranium with Z is equal to 92, and it broke up into barium and krypton with atomic numbers 56 and 62. So it was like this, and so that was it. And so you see they are not very small, they are not, can't say they are the small particles, they are just two different elements like this. So similarly here we will have a large number of particles. We will see that they will not all be barium and krypton. So when you collect these particles, and then for each particle you find the percentage, for each part you will find the percentage of the total. That means if 10,000 suppose particles have been emitted, of which how much each particle constitute a percentage, then you draw a graph. And in that case what we have a graph of this shape like this. We have a graph of a shape like this, and here you see we have two peaks, and the peaks are usually near 90. What is here? A is equal to 90 and A is equal to 140. That means you will have elements whose A is less than 80. You see this is quite small. If this is 90, this is almost 45. So you see you will have all kind of mass numbers, but the peaks, that means the maximum number of particles collected, because this is the percentage of particles collected, this will be these two, and this is obviously surrounding 92 was for krypton, and sorry, it has to come here, and this was 141. So it was like this, I think. Yes, so barium was this and krypton was this. So you'll see that the peak comes here. That actually is something that we don't actually think about, that yes, the peaks are like this. That means this particular graph is very important. It is called the graph for distribution of fission fragments. So I just gave you an idea about distribution of fission fragments, and there are certain things related to it which I will share in the study material. So you see that there is a tendency to concentrate around 100 and like this. Actually this range is from 85 to 104, and this peak is the next peak is from about 95 to 140. So you see you have peaks like this. It means it's like this. So this is about fission fragments. Now we go to something like this. We go to liquid drop model and nuclear fission. So we'll see how the liquid drop model explains the nuclear fission. So we had seen what is the liquid drop model in our last class. So we will see how this explains the nuclear fission. So you see, according to this theory of the liquid drop model, a nucleus is just like a liquid. So when a neutron comes at and hits it, this neutron gets absorbed here, and then together the neutron and this uranium or whichever element we are going to bring about fission, what will happen is that they become a compound nucleus. So in the theory of nuclear reactions that we studied, we saw that this is in an excited state, and then what happens? It again breaks up into some other parts, because since it's an excited state, it will try to come down to the ground state. And this intermediate state is called the compound nucleus. So in this, what happens? The neutron, when it comes and enters here, this uranium gets into violent vibrations. You know that as it is, there is a vibrational motion, but now the vibrations become very violent. Why it becomes violent? It's not only because the energy of this neutron obviously comes with a great kinetic energy. So it enters here, it gives a part of its kinetic energy to this, but then there is something called the binding energy. As you know, the binding energy is due to the nuclear force, and nuclear force is very strong. We know that binding energy is the force between the neutrons and protons inside the nucleus. So when another one comes in, so there is a tendency to attract this neutron which has come as a result of the hitting, and so there is a increase in energy, as a result of which it goes into violent vibrations. And as a result, what happens? There is a pull and push between the energy, the nuclear force, and the force to dislocate it. So what happens is that, I'll show you. Otherwise, we know that nuclear force, which is attractive in nature, it attracts all the particles, all the neutrons and protons, it keeps it bound like this, is very strong. And the Coulomb force of repulsion is not that strong. So as a result, what happens, since this is much bigger, you see that this repulsion between the protons does not affect the nucleons too much. But in case of heavy nucleons, what happens, since we have Z is big, that means number of protons is much big. So what happens, that the Coulomb repulsion gets bigger. So its Coulomb repulsive force is much more. So when the neutron hits it, so there is a disturbance and there is a vibration set up, and that time this Coulomb repulsion also comes into play and starts affecting the nucleus. As a result, what happens is that, which can be shown with a diagram like this, which I will just show to you. It is something like this, that we have a almost spherical nucleus, which due to the pull and push of the Coulomb repulsion and the nuclear force assumes an ellipsoidal shape, and if vibrations are stronger and if it continues, there is a somewhat type of a narrowing like this. which again breaks it. The next step I'll have to show like this in the next line. In the next line, see this, after this will come this stage where I have this, and as if it has broken here like this, and this like this. So this stage is called the critical stage. This is called a critical stage. So after reaching this stage, if the vibrations continue, then what will happen? Then it will break into two parts like this, and we will see that this is nuclear fission. So they get separated, and this is fission. But sometimes what happens is that if after reaching this this particular stage vibrations slow down, then they'll go backwards, and after that these two will come back here and they'll go back like this and retain its spherical shape. So there are some conditions by which this can be seen, which we will not do because we require only the qualitative explanation. So this is what happens. This is like a liquid drop, and we will remember what happens in a liquid drop. See, imagine that you have sprinkled some water on a table or something. I have got a table where I have poured some water. So what happens? The water, you see, they form small puddles like this, and not puddles actually, they form some the drops get like this, and you see what happens, they sometimes break this, and then they smaller and smaller parts like this very immediately. They do like this. Why they do like this? Because there's a force of surface tension there which has got a tendency to pull the surface particles closer. So what happens, they try to maintain a spherical shape, and this one becomes like this, small drops like this. So this is one, and then if I have got very small particles, they remain like this, because here there is a pull between the gravity which acts downwards, and there is a pull on the surface due to surface tension. The surface tension tries to maintain a spherical shape, and they have this one. But when this is too big, then what happens? We cannot have such a big drop, isn't it? This will be slightly spherical, but this will not be, because you see, in this case what happens? For a large volume of water, we have that its weight will be big, so its pull downwards due to gravity will be more, so it will become flat. So we have flat ones. So there is, in this case, the pull and push is between the gravity and the surface tension. The surface tension pulls the water particles closer, and the gravity pulls them down trying to flatten it. Similarly, in case of a nucleus, what happens? The pull, that means attraction, is due to the nuclear force, and the repulsion is obviously due to the Coulomb. So that's why this is a very simple explanation, and this was mathematically studied by Bohr and Wheeler, and they found a very simple mathematical explanation of this. They showed how the surface tension and the Coulomb forces, they act in opposite directions, and so we will stop our explanation here.